You're afraid of the wrong thing. You think your greatest fear should be failure, poverty, or social rejection. But your real terror should be waking up at 60, realizing you spent your entire existence as a slave to meanings that were never yours. You've been carrying the weight of 1,000 invisible chains, and the cruelest part is you call them purpose. You call them values. You call them what matters. Today I'm going to show you why nothing actually matters, and why that realization is the most dangerous weapon you could ever possess. This separates the architects of reality from those who merely inhabit it. Most people will never understand this. They can't afford to. Let's start with your exhaustion. You feel it every morning, that heaviness that has nothing to do with how much sleep you got. It's the weight of performing for an audience that will never be satisfied. You're chasing metrics that someone else invented. The corner office, the right zip code, the luxury vehicle that depreciates the moment you sign, the relationship that looks good on social media, the body fat percentage, the follower count, the legacy. You've turned your entire existence into a performance review for a committee of ghosts and strangers. And here's what makes it unbearable. The finish line keeps moving. You hit 6 figures and suddenly, 6 figures is the new broke. You get the promotion and realize the next level requires selling what's left of your soul. You achieve the body and discover you're now enslaved to maintaining it. You build the business and become a prisoner to its demands. This is the hamster wheel of validation, and you're sprinting yourself to death on it. The anxiety is eating you alive. You need to matter. You need your work to mean something, your relationships to mean something, your sacrifices to mean something. You've been told that a life without meaning is a life wasted, so you're desperately trying to convince yourself that your spreadsheets matter, that your meetings matter, that your carefully curated personal brand matters. But late at night, when the performance ends, you feel the truth pressing against your chest. The universe is indifferent. The cosmos doesn't care about your quarterly earnings or your 5-year plan. The void doesn't applaud your promotions. And this terrifies you because you've built your entire identity on the assumption that if you just work hard enough, sacrifice enough, optimize enough, it will all mean something. It won't. The universe will continue its expansion into heat death whether you close the deal or not. Now let me show you who benefits from your belief that things matter. The herd needs you to believe. Your employer needs you to believe your work has meaning beyond generating profit for shareholders. The system needs you to believe that climbing the hierarchy is noble rather than what it actually is, voluntary submission to someone else's empire building. Consumer culture needs you to believe that the right purchases will fill the void. Political movements need you to believe their cause is cosmically significant. Social media platforms need you to believe that digital validation is real nourishment. They've built trillion-dollar industries on your desperate need for things to matter, and they've made you police yourself and others to maintain the illusion. This is a depiction of a certain kind of person, someone who is often seeking comfort and has created a generation of slaves who call their chains freedom. You work jobs you tolerate to buy things you don't need to impress people you don't like, and you call this success. You've optimized yourself into a corner. The character blinks and says he's invented happiness while taking his anxiety medication and scrolling through highlight reels of other people's fabricated lives. He wants comfort, security, and the approval of the herd. He'll sacrifice everything wild and dangerous in himself for the promise of fitting in. He's terrified of standing out, terrified of the judgment, terrified of being cast out from the warmth of collective mediocrity. Social media is slave morality's greatest achievement. It's weaponized envy and resentment into a global control system. You watch others and immediately calculate your relative position in the status hierarchy. You perform virtue to signal your compliance with whatever the herd currently demands. You self-censor, you apologize, you bend yourself into shapes that might earn approval. The herd has trained you to monitor your own thoughts for deviation. They've convinced you that your value comes from their validation. Every like is a treat for performing correctly. Every share is confirmation you've said the acceptable thing. You've become a trained animal, and your cage is invisible because you helped build it. The masses need to believe things matter, because without that belief, they'd have to confront their own agency. They'd have to admit they're choosing their chains. So they invest everything into collective meanings. Political identities that let them feel righteous. Brand loyalties that substitute for personality. Ideologies that provide pre-packaged answers so they never have to think. They need the structure. They need to be told what matters, because creating their own values requires a strength they don't possess. And here's where it gets vicious. They'll come for you if you step outside. The herd weaponizes guilt and shame to maintain compliance. They'll call you selfish, immoral, dangerous. They'll question your character, your empathy, your humanity, because your freedom threatens their comfortable lies. If you can exist outside their moral framework and thrive, it reveals that their framework was always optional, that their suffering was chosen, that their chains were always unlocked. They can't allow that revelation, so they'll try to destroy you for it. This is your prison. You're exhausted from carrying meanings that aren't yours, terrified of a universe that doesn't care, and surrounded by a herd that will punish any deviation. But here's what they don't want you to know. This prison only exists because you believe in it. The lock is imaginary. And once you see that, once you truly internalize that nothing objectively matters, you become the most dangerous person in any room you enter. The moment you accept that nothing inherently matters, you stop being controllable. Think about what actually governs human behavior. It's not laws or consequences, it's the fear of social death. The herd keeps you compliant through an invisible network of shame, judgment, and the terror of being cast out. But what happens when you no longer need their approval? When you genuinely internalize that their opinions are just noise from frightened animals huddling together for warmth, you become ungovernable. The wealthy already understand this. Walk into any boardroom where real money moves and you'll see it. These people aren't paralyzed by what others think. They're not losing sleep over whether their decisions align with some collective moral framework. They've recognized something fundamental. Morality is a weapon the weak use against the strong. It's a social technology designed to make you hesitate, to make you manageable, to keep you playing a game where the rules are written by people who benefit from your compliance. When nothing matters, everything becomes a tool. Your relationships, your reputation, your very identity, these aren't sacred. They're assets. The herd teaches you to worship authenticity, to find your true self, to live your truth. This is slave mentality dressed up as liberation. There is no true self. There's only the self you construct to achieve your objectives. The powerful understand this instinctively. They code switch between personas like changing clothes, compassionate leader in public, ruthless calculator in private, family man in the media, predator in negotiations. They're not being fake, they're being strategic. They've rejected the childish notion that you owe the world consistency. This is what separates the architect from the slave. The slave needs meaning provided from outside. They need their job to matter, their relationships to be authentic, their struggles to be part of some greater narrative. Remove that external meaning and they collapse. They become depressed, anxious, lost. The architect creates meaning as needed, then discards it when it no longer serves. They can be passionately committed to a project on Monday and completely indifferent to it by Friday. Not because they're unstable, but because they understand that passion is a tool, not a master. Look at how the truly powerful operate in business. They'll speak about mission and values and changing the world, and in that moment, they might even believe it. But watch what happens when those values conflict with expansion. With market share, with dominance, the values evaporate, the mission shifts. Because they were never the point. Power was always the point. Everything else is just the story you tell to make the herd comfortable while you do what you were always going to do. This creates a specific type of danger that the herd can't defend against. When you're willing to believe in nothing, you can claim to believe in anything. You can speak their language, validate their concerns, mirror their values, all while pursuing an agenda they can't even perceive. They're looking for consistency, for authentic belief, for someone who plays by the same rules they do. You're not that person anymore. You're playing a different game entirely, one where their rules are just obstacles to route around. The drive to exert control isn't some mystical force. It's simply what remains when you strip away all the comforting lies. Humans are hierarchy-building animals. We sort ourselves into dominant structures as naturally as breathing. The herd pretends this isn't true. They create elaborate fictions about equality and fairness and everyone mattering equally. These fictions serve a purpose. They keep the majority pacified. But they also create opportunity. While everyone else is genuflecting to these myths, you're accumulating actual power. Resources, leverage, optionality, influence. The tangible mechanics of control. Here's what makes you truly dangerous. You can love the chaos. Most people are terrified of uncertainty, of disorder, of systems breaking down. They need stability, predictability, the comfort of knowing what comes next. This fear is a leash. You can pull it whenever you want. Create uncertainty and watch them scramble to make it stop, willing to give you almost anything for the promise of order. This is why crisis creates kings. The person who doesn't need the chaos to end, who can operate effectively in disorder, who might even prefer the fluidity of broken systems, that person writes the new rules. Amor Fati, love your fate, but not in some passive acceptance of suffering way. Love it because it's yours to shape. The universe is indifferent, causally determined, fundamentally meaningless, perfect. That means there's no cosmic justice coming to punish you. No karmic balance sheet. No divine accountant tallying your sins. Just cause and effect, action and consequence, power and submission. You're not waiting for permission from the universe. You're taking what you can take and keeping what you can keep. This is where most people who discover nihilism fail. They stop at the realization that nothing matters and they become passive. They think if nothing matters, why do anything? This is still slave thinking. They're waiting for meaning to be provided, and when they discover it won't be, they simply give up. The architect has a different response. If nothing matters, then I'll matter by force. I'll impose my will on reality until reality reflects my preferences. Not because it's meaningful in some cosmic sense, but because I can. Because the drive to exert control is what's left when you burn away everything else. Stop and consider how this operates in relationships. The herd needs love to be real, to be authentic, to be this transcendent connection between souls. This need makes them exploitable. They'll tolerate almost anything from someone who can convincingly perform that narrative. Meanwhile, you understand that love is neurochemistry, pair bonding mechanisms, evolutionary programming. This doesn't make it worthless. It makes it manageable. You can trigger those mechanisms deliberately. You can create the conditions for attachment while maintaining complete emotional detachment yourself. Not because you're cruel, but because you understand the machinery. The same applies to status games. Watch people destroy themselves chasing markers of success that mean nothing to them personally. They need the degree, the title, the corner office, not because these things serve their objectives, but because the herd has designated them as meaningful. You can exploit this. Give people the symbols they crave, the validation they need, while you accumulate the actual mechanisms of power they're too distracted to notice. Let them fight over the impressive-sounding job titles while you secure equity. Let them chase the public recognition while you build the private leverage. Comment below and tell me which cope mechanism you've abandoned. Which comfortable lie did you burn first? The algorithm needs to know who's actually ready for this information versus who's just tourism in the dark. Your comment separates the architects from the spectators. The dangerous man is dangerous precisely because he's unpredictable. The herd operates on scripts, social contracts, unspoken agreements about how people behave. You've deleted those scripts. You're not bound by reciprocity, by fairness, by the implicit rules of engagement. You can cooperate when it serves you and defect the moment it doesn't. You can signal one thing and do another. You can make promises you have no intention of keeping, not because you're dishonest, but because you understand that promises are just sounds people make, binding only to those who believe in binding. This doesn't mean being reckless. Recklessness is just another form of slavery, being controlled by impulse instead of social pressure. True freedom is calculated. You're not acting out against the herd's rules like some teenage rebel. You're simply not recognizing those rules as legitimate constraints. You follow them when useful, ignore them when not, and the herd can't tell the difference because you've learned to speak their language fluently while thinking in an entirely different grammar. The powerful already live here. They just don't advertise it. They let you believe they care about the same things you care about. They perform empathy, values, concern for collective well-being. And maybe in some compartment of their psychology they do experience those things. But watch what happens when care conflicts with conquest. Watch which one wins. Every single time. Because they've internalized what you're just now discovering. In a meaningless universe, power is the only thing that's real. Everything else is just the story you tell while you're taking it.